Go ahead, Sairam.
Swami, please think through me, act through me, speak through me, and most importantly, love everyone through Sairam. Sairam, everyone. So just like Sri Ram said, I didn't know I was going to talk until 3 hours ago. So I'm just going to say whatever, is coming to my mind or whatever Swami is bringing out of my mouth. So please bear with me. I also feel this is Swami's way of showing his uncertainty in my life, right? He's like, love my uncertainty. And he's always being very uncertain to me. So for those of you who I have not met before, I'm Lakshmi Kesavan. I live in Houston. I'm here for the past 8 years. I was born and brought up back in Bangalore in India. So I would like to say, and I believe that Swami's presence was always there in my life, even before I came to know of him. I was born into a God-loving family. I would say God-loving because back those days we used to hear a lot of God-fearing, terms there. But we were not God-fearing. We were very God-loving. We used to share everything at home with Swami. Even if we probably ate a pizza, right? We would keep a piece in front of Swami and say, hey, Swami, share this with us, meal with us. So that's how we were very God-loving. My parents, my grandparents, they all spent hours together in the puja room. That was their most favorite room, I should call, in the house. And we had this elaborate altar setup at home, and there were a lot of pictures of these Hindu gods, different Hindu gods. And as a child, I saw all of these growing up, and I also had, slowly started to develop my own connection or conversation with God. Back then, we didn't really know Swami. So my father used to tell me a lot of stories where, there are two stories that I hold very close to my heart. One is about Guruvayurappan. There is a place in India called Guruvayur, and Krishna is the residing deity there, right? So there is a story where, this child takes this Naivedyam or this prasadam to God and offers it when his father is not able to go that day to the temple. So when his father tells him, just go offer this to God and bring it back. So this child, when he comes there, he thinks that God is going to come down and eat, and that's when he can take back the prasadam home, right? So he's first asking God in a very loving manner, please come, have the food. I have to go back home. I'm getting late. And then what happens slowly, he starts to cry. And then after some time, he's really angry. He's like, every day you eat when my father brings it. Why don't you eat when I bring it? And then he's finally in tears and he's giving up. And that's when God comes down and then he eats the food. And because of this boy's love, he eats the entire food, right? So this boy goes back home and he says, today God is very hungry, so he ate the entire food. And then the father hears this and he gets very angry because he thinks that the boy has eaten the food, right? Who would ever think that God would come and eat food? So he just punishes the boy. He says, you need to go around the, temple 108 times. And then the father goes along with the boy to the temple. So this boy starts going around the temple. He just goes, and when he goes behind and comes on the other side of the temple, right? The father sees Guru Ayyappa. He sees Krishna coming. And the next round, suddenly in front of him, the boy appears again, takes half the circle, and then Guru Ayyappan takes half the circle. And that's when the father realizes that God is sharing the punishment or so-called punishment with the child. And that sort of friendship or that companionship or that relationship with God that the child had is something that I hold very close to my heart. And that I'd like to say that I also hold the same kind of relationship with God because I think of him as my companion, as my friend. That's the first thing that I think about. So this was one of the stories that I was very much drawn towards. And uh, like I said, the altar setup used to be very elaborate. And there used to be a picture of Vishnu and Lakshmi standing. It's a very rare picture. Usually we see Vishnu lying down on the Adisesha, and otherwise we see different avatars of Vishnu. Very rarely do we see Vishnu and Lakshmi standing next to each other. So it was a very unique picture. And as a child, I can still remember every time I looked at that picture, I felt that the deity in that picture was smiling back at me. I don't know why I always felt this. And as a child, I also expressed it to my parents, saying that, I feel that the deity in the picture is smiling back at me. And my parents didn't discourage me. They just said, go ahead, start talking to the picture, have this conversation, whatever you want to share, you share, because he's hearing. And I constantly used to share everything with that picture. And every time I saw that picture, I could see God smiling back at me. So I had this very, not fearing, but loving relationship with God. That's what I would say. So even, the mistakes that I did, I would be okay with God knowing it, but I would not be okay with my parents knowing it. That's how my relationship with God is. So I slowly started to develop this friendship with God, right? That's my first memory of God in my life. So when I was about 8 years old, that's when we started attending bhajans. We started going to the center, and we came into the so-called Swami fold, right? We all say that he came into Swami's fold. So during those days, like we used to wake up early, go to Brindavan for darshan, and it used to be quite a big preparation that used to happen. Previous day night, you keep your clothes ready, wake up early in the morning, and then take a bus, or sometimes carpool with people who have a car, and all of that, and then go to the darshan and then sit there. I used to really enjoy this journey, and I used to enjoy seeing Swami, and I used to enjoy the prasad afterwards. But I used to pray so much for Swami to not start a discourse, because I used to be bored, really bored. And I used to keep praying as a child, like, please, Swami, please don't start your discourse. And people used to wait for Swami to give a discourse, because they used to feel blessed that day, right? Like Swami is talking and he's there for so long, but I somehow didn't enjoy discourses back then. But funnily enough, these days, Swami is making me read his discourses, or at least parts of his discourses, on a daily basis. So, that's very funny. What you don't want or don't sort of like at some point, you start to like it, or that becomes your breath after some time. So that's how we slowly came into Swami's fold, attended bhajans, went to center, did all the usual things. And slowly this companionship with Vishnu, right, who was in the picture, it moved to Swami. It was more with Swami. We used to have a small picture of Swami in our cupboard. And we used to have this conversation with Swami, constantly saying, Swami, this is what happened. This is what I want to do. This is what I would love to have. All of these things, just very general things, nothing big. But we used to have this conversation. So it was just replaced by Swami and his picture. So for me, my favorite memory as a child are the Ishwara Madi celebrations at Vrindavan. So what we used to do was, children who are part of Bal Vikas, they are either asked to sing bhajans, but there is one special opportunity that comes, like where we are selected for a play, right? Like it's a full-fledged musical drama that people practice for almost 10 months before the event. And it's very rigorous. It's in the local language, Kannada, and the dialogues are written, the songs are written. It's very, very elaborate. And we need to practice like every single day. There's no giving up in between. So I got the special opportunity to audition for one of those, plays. And I was really happy, because it was like, okay, a special, time with Swami, right? He sees you, he watches you. Not that he's not watching other times, but as a child, I really liked that part. And I went in, as soon as I entered the room for the audition, the director of the play, she just nodded her head like this and said, she's too tall for the role.
Mm.
I was literally heartbroken, because I had memorized my lines, because you need to memorize your lines for auditions too, right? You need to go fully prepared. So
Mm.
that's how I had gone, and I was really heartbroken. And then I really sat in a corner and then said, Swami, I really want to do this. Then she said, okay, let her continue until we find a replacement, right? That's what she said. And they had given me the role of Lord Brahma. So the story was King Ambarisha's story. And Brahma plays about like a 10-minute, 5 to 10 minute role in that. He just comes in between, talks a few lines, and then leaves. So, but I was very happy, because I was going to get that separate time with Swami, where he was going to watch me. And I was very happy. And then, every day I used to have this fear of losing my part because they would eventually find a replacement, but I would still go make it to the practice. So slowly what happened that auntie said, okay, she put so much of effort, let her be, let her be, take the role of Brahma. And I just happened to be, given that role. And then what happened slowly, we started going for practice every day. So after practicing every day, all of a sudden, one day, she came to me, the auntie, she came to me and she said, will you do the role of Vishnu instead? So the role of Vishnu is, for those of you who don't know King Ambrisha's story, he's a devotee of Vishnu. So Vishnu comes in most of the part of the stories, and it's a very big role. And initially I was very, very apprehensive about it, but that wanting to be in front of Swami, right? That pushes you to do anything that, it pushes you beyond your fears. So I said, okay. And then I got that role of Vishnu and I did it. So I always feel that the connection, that companionship I had with Vishnu as a child, right, eventually also came out. And I know I played the part of Vishnu in front of Swami. We practiced very rigorously, days went by, but I still don't remember a thing about what happened on the day of the play because it just flew by. It was so quick. All the time I was thinking about, you were going to get the special time with Swami. It's going to be so long. He's going to keep watching you. It just went by. But it was really a great experience for me as a child. So something that I really wanted, and I asked Swami, like, I want to do this role, Swami. I want to do this for this, for you to watch me. Be it for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I didn't think about that, but I just asked it, and then he granted that wish. That's one of the experiences that I can never forget, because that's something I really wanted, and he gave it to me. Then growing up, I had multiple experiences, where Swami showed his presence in my life. And during the last year of my undergrad, I was interning at one of my dream companies. And all my friends who were interning along with me were getting job offers and all of that with the company. And here I was wanting a job offer very desperately, but nobody was even trying to talk to me about it. And I was feeling extremely bad that this was not happening. And I sat down in front of Swami. I had this conversation. I said, Swami, just see how much of effort and energy I'm putting towards this. You know that I really want this, right? And I used to have this very intense conversations. Like, you can even today sometimes, right? Like when I have these intense conversations, I have my husband asking me like, who are you talking to, right? It's as though somebody else is in the room. So I was having this very intense conversation, and then I left it to Swami after that. But I was feeling bad every single day that I was not getting a job. And here comes one person who's very, very important in my life. It's my close friend's mother, and she happens to have many dreams of Swami. And I happen to feature in some of them. So she came to me and she told me, she used to call me Harini, right? That was my name at home. So she just said, I have this dream where you were having a conversation with Swami. You're talking something about a job, okay? And then Swami is telling you, just say no to the job. Just say no to the job. And he said, that team is a very big team, 59 men, you'll be the only woman, okay? And the timings will not suit you. All these things will not work out for you. You'll not be happy then. Just reject the job. That's what he said. Here I was thinking like, they are rejecting me. And here Swami was saying, just reject the job. But anyway, I told auntie, they haven't even offered me a job to reject. I don't know why Swami is even bringing this up. And I also would like to say that many times auntie has shared her dreams with me, where Swami has mentioned certain things about me or whatever I need to do, and things have happened that way. So I have very strong faith in that. So what happened was, I just kept interning, and then my internship period got done and I came out of the company. So nothing really happened. So after a week's time where I was preparing for one of the job interviews, the company where I interned, they called me and they said, we would like to offer you a job. So I didn't know what to say, because I knew that Swami had said reject the job. I knew all of that. And then I just wanted to inquire more about the job before I really had to say that out loud, right? Because until now, Swami was blessing me with everything that I want. It was almost like I would be very cautious about asking Swami. That I used to be very mindful about asking Swami. But he used to be very gracious in giving me things that I wanted. So this was something which was very new to me, something that I really wanted, but Swami was asking me to say no. So I just wanted to inquire more about the team and where I would be working and what I would be doing. And I got to know that there are 59 men in the team, and I would be the only woman. And the timings were really crazy, because back in India, they were working during US times, and it was very crazy. So this was the first time I was asking something and Swami was saying no. So I wanted to make sure that Swami is really saying no. So I went to my favorite practice that I do even till today, that I use chits and I asked Swami whether I should be going ahead with something or not. And then Swami blessed no. So here I was wanting something so dearly, but Swami was saying no. And I also believe that this is one of the turning points in my life, right? There are two phases in my life. I have this picture in front of me where Swami is blessing with both his hands, right, in that Abhaya Hasta pose. And I often wondered, was there a meaning like where Swami blessed with one hand in some photographs and then two hands? I have some weird questions running in my head. And I got the answer to this question in one of the talks that I heard. And in the talk, the speaker explained that Swami blesses with two hands, and he blesses with one hand the things that you really want, and he gives you everything that you want. Initially, he starts with that. And then when you're so close to him, when you're willing to do anything for him, he starts blessing you with whatever he wants to give you. So I can literally divide my life into two parts and say, hey, this part is where I got everything I wanted. But right now I'm going through a part where I feel whatever I say no to, or whatever I say I don't want to, he's like putting me there and saying, hey, you have to do this. So it's just two different phases, but I really enjoy both the phases. That's what I should say. And Swami slowly but very steadily breaking my resistance towards certain things, because I think that's one of my character traits that I need to work on, right? So he is breaking the resistance, but every time he has done that, and every time I have seen the big picture, right, it's always been the best for me. Like, can the divine artist ever go wrong? It's not possible. And and with every experience, he's leaving me with something that I learn, or especially training me to go with his flow. That's what I should say, rather than my flow. I am more of a planner. I like to plan things and be very sure about what's going to happen in the future.
And that we know.
Yeah. But it's slowly Swami's changing me. He's changing me to go with his flow. I would like to close with just one small recent experience that I had. I always have this constant conversation with Swami, like I said, and I also complain that he's always keeping me on my toes, right? He's always this, if I may say, attention seeking, right? Like, I'm constantly calling out to him, and I was telling him this, you're making me call out to you constantly and all of that, right? It could also be, it could be my ego telling, internally feeling proud that I'm constantly thinking of Swami. So I was having this conversation with Swami for some time. And a few weeks ago, me and my husband were in the car, and we were just waiting to take a left at the stop. And when we are going to take the left, all of a sudden from nowhere, a car came and hit us. So in movies and whatnot, in serials, everywhere you see, accidents happen like this in a moment. But for me, that moment was the longest moment of my life. That's what I should say. Because I could see the car sliding, and I could slowly see the airbags blowing up. And I could hear myself, screaming, just right. And then I'm telling myself, hey, even at this moment, you're not calling out to Swami, you're calling who is this right? Say Swami's name. And then I said Swami's name after that. I called out to Swami loudly. So it was like a lesson for me, saying that, hey, you still, don't remember me every moment. Maybe Swami initially showed his presence where I would observe it like in days, right? Days time. Now I see it more often, maybe more frequently, but not every second yet. So I just felt that, that moment, how foolish was I to not scream out Swami's name, but, to scream out, even when I was thinking that Swami is constantly keeping me on my toes and making me think about him. So I'm a person who believes that Swami constantly, has this conversation with all of us, for that matter. And I always look for something or the other. Like, it could be a forward text that somebody sends me. It could be a song that plays on YouTube all of a sudden, right? It could be a discourse that plays. I definitely know Swami is trying to tell something through that. So there definitely has been a shift in my, I would say, my relationship with Swami. Not that the companionship has changed. Initially, I held his hand, hoping that, he would be there for me all the time, every time. He would give me what I wanted. But now he is holding my hand and leading me. And I pray to Swami that, he takes me in the direction that he wants me to go, and he makes me the person he wants me to be. With that, I would like to end. And thank you, Sairam.
Yes, Lakshmi. Always, such a joy to listen to people like you, because just knowing you and having worked with you as extensively as I do, you're one person that who I personally admire and look up to in terms of commitment. Someone who, if Lakshmi has given her word, I can go to sleep knowing it will be done and done right. That's the kind of um, YA that you are, and I can see where that comes from, that sort of intense longing and that connection with Bhagwan right from a young age. I wanted to ask you, you used to talk constantly. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, I wanted to ask you, you used to constantly talk to, that picture of Vishnu. And then you went to Bhagwan, to Brindavan. How did you immediately make that switch from talking to that picture of Vishnu to Bhagwan? Did that happen very naturally, or like how did that shift happen? Because this was something that was ingrained in you when you were very young. And how did you go about, did you see Vishnu in Swami? I'm just curious, when you met him, or how did that transition happen?
I couldn't hear your question completely. I think I got disconnected for a moment, but I would say it was not intentional that I was replacing that Vishnu with Swami. We still have the picture and it's still close to me. And I've always told my father that, any other picture, it's okay if you give it away to somebody, but not that picture. I'm still attached to it. I won't say no. But it's almost like I saw that person who was in that picture in form, in flesh and skin, right? That's how for me, it connected as a child. It was not two different people. That's what I felt.
Wow.
That smile was familiar. That smile is something that I can still feel it if I close my eyes.
Wow.
And I hold it very, very close to my heart, because that smile is what made me have that connection with God without any fear, right? Because people, I think when you have these conversations with a photograph or something, right? It's very easy for people to think, hey, what is she doing, right? Is she crazy? But something beyond that made me pursue that, because that smile was very real too.
And you felt that smile pretty much in that first go when you saw Bhagwan the first time around, or did Bhagwan's did Bhagwan grow on you, or did you see Vishnu in Bhagwan after a few visits? I'm just curious. Did that flash happen ASAP, like the moment you set your eyes on him?
I don't know really when it happened. I can't pinpoint, because my parents initially used to spend a lot of time, like I said, in the puja room. They still do, but our interaction started to happen more with Swami's pictures then, right? So it was maybe they brought in Swami, and that's how gradually it got replaced. I don't know. I can't pinpoint exactly, but it just so happened that it was very familiar to me. It was not like I had not taken this path before.
And the next question I had for you, just listening to you, it was very interesting. You said, that one hand of Swami blesses you with all that you want, and then he draws you and pulls you in, like they say of miracles, right? Like his visiting card that pulls you in, and then so that you may ask for what he wants, and through that second hand, he's starting to give you what he wants, which could sometimes mean it could be in conflict with what you want, right? Now, you said one of your character traits is resistance, yet at the same time, you seem to be perceptive to any message that you see, hear, or any person who shares something with you as a sign from Bhagwan. So I don't know. I'm not able to gel the two together. This person of so-called resistance and this person who's so perceptive and open to every input that's coming into her as something from Bhagwan. The two, for me, almost don't seem to gel. I just wanted you to kind of explain it so that I understand it better.
Hearing or taking a message from Swami is different from acting on it, right? You can definitely take a message. Swami can say, this is the way to go, right? And you can take that as a message. But acting on it is the resistance part. Like, I feel that when somebody's telling you, hey, this is good for you, right? You have fever, you need to take this bitter pill. It's good to hear, but to act on it is where the resistance comes in. There is no resistance in receiving his message. That's always open, right? Whether it's good, sometimes what we think is not good, all of that. But the resistance comes only when you have to act on that particular message. So I think that's
and so how have you now, how do you fight that resistance, and how have you begun to act upon his messages that come through to you? It almost seems like the messages always seem to come through to you or seem to hit you. The very fact that you can even recognize it as a message is a blessing in the first place. A lot of times, I don't know if I realize, his messages. I'm not even perceptive, not even tuned into the frequency to even understand or perceive that this is a message. The very fact that you are tuned in is a blessing in the first place. How then do you kind of, what tweaks have you started to make, or unknowingly has begun to happen such that you're now able to not just receive it, but slowly but surely act upon it? Is there something that you've observed? Because I know you're a good observer as well. And so is there something that you've observed that has happened or come about over a period of time wherein you're able to slightly tweak that resistance and kind of submit to his will, per se?
I wouldn't say that the resistance is gone, but it's definitely reduced. That's what I would say. It is almost like I said, I have a very friendly relationship with Swami, right? I often tell him, right, as though you're going to give me another way out. It's not possible, right? I have to go through this. But I think earlier I used to do it in a very sad mood, I can say, like, I have to do this, and I have no other go, that sort of. But now it's almost like a running joke between me and Swami that you're not going to give me any other way. I have to go through this, right? But I would say the turnaround time to act on it has sort of reduced because the resistance has reduced.
Wow.
Like earlier I used to get a message, but I never used to act on it for long. It can be very long times, right? Like Swami, I take everything as a message, right? Swami says, from somewhere he says, like somebody in the Discord says, Swami said, read Sacharitra, you'll get answers for everything. I'll hear the message, but I won't act on it, right? Because that's something like you have to go take the book, do it. But now I try to act on it like as early as possible, because I know eventually I have to cross that and I'm not going to get away out.
Hmm.
So it's better do it now than keep it for later, right? So that's my I think that's what has changed in me. But a lot of I think now I'm able to accept things a little more easily, right? When they don't happen my way. Earlier, I used to be very heartbroken, and it used to take me some time to come out of it. It really used to take me some time and some people to really bring me out of it, right? Like they used to talk to me for hours together and bring me out of it. But now probably it's a little quicker. That's what I would say.
Wow. And I think, in your answer, right, I kind of realized, oftentimes, sometimes when we have no choice, all of us are forced to accept. When we have our own schemes and plans, and then he comes and bludgeons it. And we are tired to a point wherein we give up and then accept. Seems like that's a phase that all of us sometimes are forced into. But then you seem to have now gotten into that next phase of relatively willing acceptance. And then Krishna then goes on to say, a true devotee is one who has sitiksha, cheerful acceptance. Anything that comes, he cheerfully accepts. So it almost seems so beautiful that, through your faith as a God-loving family and as a God-loving child, you have, in one sense, initially begun as accepting it grudgingly, if I may call it, at times when he's not given you what you want, to now relatively willingly beginning to accept and therefore able to act on it quicker. That's beautiful. That journey that you've been through, I think, is so important for us, to understand and take away. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Anybody who has any questions for her, feel free. As ever, these sessions are very informal, a joyful sharing, amongst all of us. So feel free to pose any questions. Sairam. So Namo says, loved hearing about your experiences. And if I may ask you one final question, in case nobody else has a question, again, no question, is a bad question. Let me put it that way. We all learn from any sort of question. So again, no one needs to hesitate. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Lakshmi, was, in when you began almost from a place of faith, I would call it, from a place of faith, that was the upbringing that was fed to you, and that faith was, you could say, was initially blind, in the sense that, you used to talk to that picture, you used to, that's your way of connection. And from that faith being blind, Swami has now filled you with a certain sense of the ability to perceive, and helped you reduce your resistance as well. Now, as you go through life's experiences, right, what is it that you feel that you are able to kind of work on, or you need to work on, apart from the resistance aspect in this journey of yours? Is there some other aspect that you feel that you need to work on, that you find would be a very useful aspect for you?
So I would say, the quote where Swami says, right, you're not one but three people, right? Who you think you are, who others think you are, and who you actually are. So I can say pinpoint certain things that I want to change about me. My parents can say, hey, you need to change these things about me. But I think over this journey, Swami's revealed some things which I not even in my slightest thought, had that, like, okay, I have this trait in me, right? He has revealed those things to me. So I think that I really don't know what I exactly need to change. I know only a little, tip of the iceberg, right? But Swami is revealing those traits that I need to change slowly. through each of the experiences. That's what I feel.
Hmm.
So yes, I'm very critical about myself. I do have a list where I can say, hey, I need to change this, but it's beyond all of that, right? Swami shows you certain things that you don't think that you have the trace of it, right? The slightest trace of it. Certain things while you're going through certain experiences, they come out. And I really like something that Murliana always says, right? Like, for all of us are familiar with Murli. So he always says that the water starts to boil so that the sediments can go down, right? The sediments can come out. The sediments are things that won't be seen initially, right?
Yeah.
When you see the water, you're not going to see those things initially, but they reveal to you over time. So I think Swami is revealing that list slowly to me.
Wow. And the reason I even asked you this question in the first place was because you're one of those very self-aware, kind of individual who's quite sufficiently reflective, and like you said, almost critical, self-critical. I would say to a point of fault. That's and therefore, learning from a fellow YA like you, I can tell you very honestly, has been one of the great pleasures of my personal YA journey. And I wish and pray to Bhagwan that I'm sure you're going to continue in his path, that we also get a chance to walk along with you. For such is the joy that I have personally derived and learned so much from working with you. With that being said, any final questions before we move on to Sister Namu?
Yes, Sairam, Sriram.
Sairam, Manishanti.
Yeah, wonderful talk, wonderful. I just delighted to hear all these experiences of Lakshmi. I can relate it to my own experiences, and Sriram knows my constant dialogue with Swami in every step, in every moment. And it's just sometimes people might think I'm just talking to the wall. I mean, it's like that much loud communication almost with Swami from my end. And so I truly appreciate, I always enjoy the YAs, my Sai and I. Lately, I could not attend because of the time change, and we are much older than you guys. So it kind of coincides with our dinner time, but today, we were doing something, and I told my husband, I want to hear this YA talk. And this is another miracle, tiny miracle of Swami. And we were doing something, and I said, Baba, I want to hear this talk today. And exactly 2 minutes to 7, we finished the thing that we were doing. So I know that Swami is always there. And as you were asking over and over again to Lakshmi, how do you relate? I believe with my experience and being older, it helps. I believe if we keep our sense organs open, we can see the guidance, hear the things that Swami is guiding us to do. And that's what I wanted to share. Sairam.
Lovely, Manisha auntie. Almost the key word there was open. I almost need to, that's another separate probably my Sai and I session with you on what open, keeping your senses open means almost.
Keeping sense open, I'm not going to get into the detail. That means eliminating all the doubts.
Mm.
The senses are not open, it gets diluted, almost like with the black veils of doubts, with the negative energies. If we try to remove that and we keep it pure and elevated, try to at least during the time we want the guidance, I think the sense organs are so open, you will be able to hear and see his guidance.
Wow, lovely. Thank you so much, Manisha auntie. Sairam. Anybody else? Because, if Sister Lakshmi is one of our crown jewels, following hers is another. Namratha, again, is another YA that I'm very, very excited to listen to. And Namu, as she's, she's referred to lovingly amongst us, is the next speaker. And Namu, feel free to introduce yourself, and looking forward to hearing your journey, Sairam.
Thanks, Sriram. You reminded me I needed to update my name on here, so it's Namu here now. Sairam, everyone. I realize I think I see a few faces I know and a few names here that I'm not as familiar with, so I'll introduce myself a little bit. Thank you for having me here, first and foremost. So my name is Namu. As Sriram said, I'm a YA in Dallas. I went to the SSC program there. I graduated there. I'm an SSC teacher there, and I've been teaching for about 6 years. And this is my second year teaching Group 4, so that has been a fun journey. And I currently work right now at as a program manager focused on social emotional growth and learning in education nonprofit in Dallas. So if you can't tell, my whole life has really centered around education and what that looks like, right, and affecting students, right, and that's the goal. And so I'll be honest, I mean, like when I think when Sriram reached out initially, just be like, hey, Namu, like come do my Sai, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. I don't know if any of this is going to be worthwhile to hear. But he was like, no, it's okay. Just talk about your connection with Swami and how you embody his Sai principle in your life. And I think one of the first things that sort of flitted through my mind when I was reflecting on this was this idea of life application, actually. Again, I'm more education oriented, so just bear with me. I'm going to have a lot of those examples. Because I consider myself a student, a Sai student first and foremost. And so for me, it was about, okay, life application, right? What am I embodying at the end of the day? How am I practicing Swami's message? And simply put, how am I applying it in my life, right? I see my co-teacher on this call, and so I'll just share, like, we tell our kids this all the time that, life application, it's not something that you say, oh, I'm going to practice loving and effective communication, and you practice it for that week and then you throw it away and you never think about it again. Like, that's not what it is. Otherwise, it would not be called life application. And so that's sort of something it struck me this way when I was reflecting on what if I applied to my life? What if I sort of embodied, hopefully, Swami's message? And so for me, growing up in SSC, I think I'll start with just by sharing, like, one of the quotes that's really stood out for me over the years is, at the end of education is character. And it resonates with me a lot. It might resonate with others as well. But for me, it's just sort of this profound statement of saying, I might have graduated from SSC, I might have graduated from high school or college or whatever that looks like, and I might have finished one chapter of my life, but my education never stops. We are continually growing and we are continually learning as human beings how to behave and do good and see good and be good at the end of the day, right? And Swami gives us enough tests over life to keep practicing that, right? So he gives us enough homework and assignments and tests along the way. So for me, at the end of it, education's character is sort of one of the main things that I feel like is something that I use to sort of define my connection with Swami, and just really reminding myself that I am, I think, a grown adult, but I'm still growing and I'm still learning. And the thing about growth is it's never really a linear process, right? It's never going to be something that's going to be I graduated from story group, I graduated from group 1, I'm moving up. And that is the goal, of course, but for me, my spiritual growth is something that I'm trying to keep on the up and up, but I've definitely had it go a little bit up and down over time, and I'll be very honest about that. And I can't really talk about my connection with Swami without really recognizing where I have had it falter here and there, in the spirit of true honesty here. And what was kind of interesting is, I've had this privilege, I think, of, experiencing Swami and the people around me. Of course, we have a very loving Sai community. And then I think also just being able to have that privilege of experiencing him in person as well. And so I remember one of my favorite moments growing up in SSC was, when we got to do these Parthi pilgrimages. That was sort of the best time, because you get to practice with your friends outside of SSC, and you get to connect with other people in the region, and it's sort of fun. It definitely is fun. Shouldn't say sort of. It definitely is fun. But I remember there's one particular trip in 2008, and somehow it was through the chit system. Swami was like, "Oh, you're gonna play Krishna," and I was so terrified. I remember being so terrified of this as a 10-year-old, because all the other girls in my group who were like the Gopikas, and one girl was Yashoda, they all had dance experience, and I was the only one who had had no dance experience. So I was thinking in my head, Swami, why did you choose me? Of all people, you could have stuck me in the back. I'm tall. I know I'm in the back most of the time. Make me a Gopika. It's all cool, right? And I was so scared about that. But I don't know. Somehow we got through that program. I'm assuming it went well. It went okay. And the best part of it was for me was at the end of the day, whereas, he came and talked to us students, and I got to talk with him a little bit and got to take Pada Namaskaram. So that was a huge blessing in and of itself. Um, but, I say that my spiritual growth has had its ups and downs. And so that was definitely an up. And at that age, when you're going through SSC, you learn, right? Like, oh my gosh, like I was freaking out afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh, I've literally just had a conversation with the Lord of the universe. This is crazy. That's awesome. It's like you meet a celebrity, you're just like on the high. And that was something where, you're at this point in time as an SSC student, you feel so confident, and trusting and loving and feel his love. And then it was something around somewhere around group 4 when you become a teenager. I think when you grow through that point in time, you do start doubting yourself a lot. And so for me, my mental health did take a little bit of a hit during that point in time. And that was where I had to sort of make an active decision whether I was truly committed to Swami or not. And that I feel like I sort of remember that turning point in my life around that point in time where I was struggling with, when you're a high schooler, you're dealing with, high school pressure, you're dealing with academic stress, you're dealing with peer pressure, social stress. Does this person like me? Does this person think I'm cool or not? You're dealing with college stress. There's like so much that goes on at that age, and you have all this negative self-talk. At least that was my case, where I had so much negative self-talk and was really trying to figure out, like most teenagers are, like, who am I? What do I stand for?
Mm.
And so I do remember, though, part of why I think my mental health had also taken a little bit of a hit at that time, and why I was also not just doubting myself, but doubting a little bit on my spirituality and what my connection with Swami was when, as a teenager, when you're figuring out who you are, you look to the adults around you and you look to the examples in the world around you, and you sort of demand that, hey, if these people are talking the talk, they have to walk the walk, right?
Mm.
So if they're telling me to practice unity of thought, word, and deed, do I see that reflected in those role models? And this isn't, and this isn't to call anyone out or anything like that, because I think none of us are perfect examples, and we're all trying, right? We're all still growing. But it was also something at that age where it did shake me a little bit, and I sort of had to take a step back and be like, do I still believe in this? Is it my choice to believe in this, or is it somebody else's choice to believe in this? And it was sort of a process for me. And then I kind of came to a point by the time I got to my senior year of high school where I was like, okay. And I think I had to think a little logically about this, where I was like, okay, well, we talked about, in our leadership class in SSC, like we talked about, all these great world leaders, and we've talked about, you want to be the change you want to see in the world. So I can't, in good conscience, sit here and complain about everything I see wrong and say I want change without wanting to be part of that change, or wanting to at least try.
Mm.
So for me, it was taking that sort of logical step into saying, you know what, I'm going to believe in Swami because I have no reason not to. What choice, what adequate reason do I have to say, oh, he's not God, or he's not there for me? I think I also really, it's a matter of perspective.
Mm.
If I'm not reaching out to him, then of course I'm not going to feel like he's there, because I'm not the one who's reaching out to it. But he's the one who says, if you take one step towards me, I'm going to take 100 towards you. I'm going to be like, I'm there. You just need to reach out. So that was sort of a point, I think, where I sort of made that active decision, I think, as a teenager to say, you know what? Yeah, I am a Swami devotee and I need to practice this. And I'm going to try and, you know, be uh, his student at the end of the day and at the end of education as character. So I'm going to try and hopefully let his message, when he says my life is my message, let his message show through my life. And so that's the goal, right? Um, and the other thing is sort of simply put, you know, I think part of that decision was faith, right? You just have to have faith at the end of the day. But the other part was logic and just saying, well, I've done nothing, so I'm going to do something
Mm.
now. So I think that was kind of my thought process going into entering college and making sure that I was trying to be as good of a person as I can, really. And of course, like I said, spiritual growth is not something that is inherently something that we can, or at least for me, it wasn't something that I felt like I was progressing towards all the time. But I know that even though I had my dips and my doubts here and there, I was still making my way back up and trying to keep on going. Now, the only way I can, I feel like, truly reflect on Swami's presence in my life is actually by bringing a little science into this. So I'm a psych major fundamentally, so please bear with me. I'm going to bring some child development stuff here and there into this because that is the way I view the world now. And for me, I feel like, you know, science and spirituality are just two sides of the same coin. So it was really, I think, you know, for those who know that I started college as a speech pathology major. I'm clearly not a speech pathology major. I feel like I mentioned that. But it wasn't until I switched over and entered a psych course and I switched my major and degree into that I felt that click of understanding that it was like all the pieces sort of came together where I was like, oh yeah, you know, I've heard all these examples through Swami's life. I know my 5 human values. I know what we've talked about in SSE, but it was sort of the understanding the science behind why are humans the way we are? Why do we behave this way? How can we just sort of, it was things like, you know, understanding our attachment styles, and child development and social psychology, and the very fact that our brain has the ability to rewire itself at that level. And looking at something like that, that was sort of the evidence I needed from the scientific perspective to say, oh, yeah, logically, this is all making sense to me, right? I have no reason to refute this. So I'm going to trust and put my trust in this. And it's something like, you know, I said the brain thing, like, for example, you know, when we're saying you know, in center, like, you know, just you need to love others, you need to practicing gratitude, something like that. When we look at it from a neuroscientific level, that's like our brain is rewiring ourselves. When we continuously practice that gratitude, our brain is getting so used to thinking of things in that manner. We're just getting so used to you know, processing things in that way and using those like connections in our mind that it does become second nature. And that is when we are not just practicing gratitude, we are just grateful, right? And there's the switch there. There's a difference when we get to that point. So for me, it was a lot of understanding the science behind humanity. It was sort of like what helped me figure out my spirituality and really feel that extra boost of confidence in it. There's this one attachment study I just wanted to mention, and you know, for those who might have been familiar or who take a psychology course, it's one of the first sort of studies that they tell you about. And essentially what happens is there's a child and a mother in a closed room, and a stranger comes in, and they are sort of evaluating, does this child have a secure attachment to their mom enough to the point that they are ready to go out and embrace the world and talk to the stranger. When I was learning about that study the first time, and you want a secure attachment, you want to feel so secure in the knowledge that somebody has your back, that you're ready to go and just trust in them to the point that you're going to go and explore the world and know that they're going to be there for you. And when I was like thinking about that, I was like, oh, is that not what we talk about when we say, oh, have faith in Sai, put your trust in Sai, you know, he's there for you. It's sort of the same concept where we know, you know, he's our mother, right? So we know that we want to feel that sense of home at the end of the day and trust that he is going to be there for us. And he's just going to have our back at the end of the day. So for me, when I was like learning about this through psychology, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm getting it now. I'm seeing it from like a little bit of a different perspective. Like it's all making sense. When one of the things that I feel like my connection with Swami sort of has revolved around, and I've become more aware that it's revolved around it over time, is that I think it sort of revolves around three things: fear, faith, and logic. I realize that's like a very weird combination of things, but I will explain. I think fear and faith are very more interconnected than we might realize.
Mm.
So fear, right? I mean, we definitely look at fear and we think, hey, that's kind of a negative thing, right? Because like that's going to hold us back. But if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, fear is actually something that kept our ancestors alive. If you see lightning or if you see a giant predator, your fear is what's keeping you alive and telling you like, oh my gosh, I need to run and get to safety. But in this day and age, while fear is keeping us safe in a physical environment, when it comes to the point where fear becomes so crippling that it affects your mental peace and your sense of security, and it overcomes you versus you are controlling it, that is when it becomes a problem. And so I've had a few moments where I started realizing, like, how do I overcome this fear? Just interesting with Swami. So one example was when I was like 15. I went to this camp and I was a counselor at this camp. It's for people with it was really with children and young adults with mental and physical disabilities. And so every counselor is paired with a camper there, and I was paired with a 23-year-old woman with Down syndrome, and I was 15 at that time, and it was my first time like taking care of somebody properly. I think my parents were like, "You go see how it is, like go try it out." And there was a moment in that week in which I was paired with this camper, and we were going around, and I was trying to make sure her experience was good. Was where we had karaoke night. I still remember this. We had karaoke night, and I hadn't realized that you have to sign your camper up in advance for them to sing. And she was so excited to sing like the Spice Girls song. I forgot what it is, but it was Spice Girls. And so we get to the end of karaoke, and she didn't get her chance to sing, and she was so upset. And I felt horrible because I was like, oh my gosh. And some of that negative self-talk sort of came back in where I was like, I'm not cut out for this. See, I let her down, like all these horrible things. And what ended up happening was she wouldn't move because she was just so upset she didn't get to sing. And we were going to lunch, and I was hungry. I was like, we need to get to lunch. But at that point, I was so overcome with all the emotions I had been feeling that week and the stress of taking care of somebody else. I just didn't know what to do, and I was ready to cry as well, and she was at that point as well. And so I just was sitting next to her and thinking in my head, oh my gosh, Swami, what do I do? And I think it was sort of in that moment when I asked him, he was like, you finally asked, like I've been waiting, and I just sort of calmed down. Somehow I think I sort of let go of everything in that moment. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's no audience anymore. Everybody left, but there's still a stage, There's no like music track, but like we still have a stage. So I grabbed her hand and I took her on the stage and told her to stand there. And I went down and I grabbed my phone and I started recording. And I told her, I was like, okay, go sing, And she was confused at first, but then she just started singing like to her heart's content. And I think when she finished, we just went to lunch. Like that was it. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, if only I had asked sooner. If only I had known to just reach out to him and realize that he's there for me, So that's one example where I had that moment of realizing like, oh, okay, this is what faith and Sai means, Another example that happened a little bit more recently was when I went to Nashville. I went to Nashville about 3 years ago to pursue my master's. And I was really excited because that was the first time I had actually moved away from home. I was fortunate enough to go to a university for undergrad that was like 10 minutes from my house. So I commuted. So I never really had that experience until my master's. And I was really excited. And then I got there and I realized, okay, this is a new city. This is a new set of people, and they're great. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's a new set of people. I have to learn how to make new friends again. I have to learn how to communicate. I realized there was a more rigorous, expectation in my coursework. And once again, all these doubts started coming back in of like, are you meant to be here? It felt like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be here or not. Am I smart enough to be here? Am I deserving enough to be here at this campus? Silly self-talk, things like that. But my mental health, again, sort of took a little bit of a dip when I got to this point where I just couldn't believe in myself anymore. And while I was telling myself, like, okay, but like, Swami's there, I don't think I was fully believing in that either. And it wasn't really until I went to see a counselor at school and they were like talking me through it and they were going like, Namu, I think, or they didn't say Namu because I don't go by Namu there, but they were like, I think you're experiencing imposter syndrome. And it's this feeling of like, you feel like you're not good enough, but everybody experiences this. A lot of people experience this at any point in their life. And so once I put that label, I was like, oh, okay. It's apparently widespread enough that they have a name for this. So that must mean I'm not alone. And the other thing that helped me, I think, as I started to get back to myself was, again, experiencing that love from the Sai community. And so I started pushing myself to really just show up for center. I had pushed myself already to, be an SSC teacher there as well. And it was that and going to bhajans and connecting with the people there. Like, I don't think they truly know how grateful I am. I feel like I've said it to them, but, it was something like that, just feeling that love and support from the community there that really helped me feel the love and support for myself that I needed to feel. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Did not expect that. I think what I'll do, I'll just wrap up by saying that it was kind of a funny thing, but recently, I'll just share one quote, one other message from Swami that sort of stuck with me. And it's so funny because when this region retreat theme was announced, it's Love My Uncertainty. And I turned to my mom and I was like laughing and I was like, oh my God, this quote has followed me around for 2 years now. And I don't know when I heard it. At some point when I was in Nashville, somebody had brought it up to me and I was thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, how have I gone 20 something years without hearing this? But it was sort of what I needed to hear at that moment to feel that faith in Swami again, to say, okay, you know what, you may not feel super confident in yourself right now, but just trust that like it's gonna be okay, and just have patience and he's gonna fix it. Because obviously, like, we don't know his full design, we never will be. And I think it was Manishanti even said, right, we have to keep our organs open, right? We need to just be open to all the possibilities even. And I think that was sort of something I needed to hear at that point. And one of the things I was reflecting on with that quote especially was something that came up when I was in Nashville. Region 4 also had a YA satsang, and so I was asked to share on a topic, and I was talking about Love My Uncertainty because it was like real for me. And something that we came up with was this point that Swami doesn't say handle my uncertainty or deal with it, right, or manage it, or like figure it out. He says love it. And so for me, when he says love it, that's my sign to say, oh, I just need to let go and surrender and just put my full trust that he's gonna figure it out. Like, I might be stressing about something, but he's gonna figure it out. This morning I was stressing about, oh my gosh, I'm running from work. We were finishing up a workshop for some teachers in Dallas, and it wrapped up, but I was stressing out this morning that like, am I gonna have enough time to come back and jump on this call? And then I was thinking to myself like, okay, well, you know what, just it's fine. Shriram knows you're gonna be a few minutes late. It's gonna be all right. It's like Swami's gonna make sure you're there when you need to be there.
Right.
And I'm here. So I'll just end off with that thought, really, that I think that's something I'm trying to sort of commit to myself right now, is just loving his uncertainty and just sort of trusting in him and knowing that he's going to be there, and I just need to let go a little. Like Lakshmi, that's a little bit of a hard thing for myself as well. I'm so used to being in control over, like, I have to have everything scheduled, and Sridhar,
I know that.
I'm a planner. I put things on tables, this. so I have a similar issue with that, but I'm trying, and that's my spiritual journey, right? So, anyway, well, thank you everyone so much for giving me this time. Thank you, Sriram, for calling, and thank you, Swami, for the opportunity. Sairam.
Saram Namo. We're not just happy that you're here now, but we're just happy that you're here as a part of the Region 10 YA group, because you're such an important character, I believe, of that group. Because I think there's so much that story offers to us. I think because your story is one that will resonate with a lot of folks who grow up. Saram Manishanti, I see you put your hands up. Do you want to share something?
Yes, beautiful talk. Again, I can relate to this thing, and I will share something, Namu, that you probably will laugh later on, but you might find, some connection there. Our daughter, who was also part of the SSE and then YA, and now she is a mother of a 2.5-year-old. She is 38 years old. She had a similar situation like you. And she, of course, did her undergrad in electrical engineering from UT, worked at Freescale for a couple of years. Then she went to do her MBA at University of Notre Dame. So while she went to Notre Dame, that was her very first time leaving the hometown. And she was very excited. She got some scholarship there and this and that, all excitement went there. Okay, fine. We went there, we got her settled there. And then I came back after settling her there. And 2 days later, she calls me. She says, I don't like it here. And I said, yeah, that happens. No, Mom, I don't like it here. I want to come back. I said, wait, let's talk more. Think about it. We'll talk again tomorrow. Next day again, no, Mom, I made up my mind. I cannot stay here. I'm missing Austin and everything there. I want to come back. And it was almost like I'm standing on a leaf on a bank of water. Where do I see my balance? That's how I felt. That so much money spent for registration, coursework, apartment rent, everything. And she says she wants to come back. Oh my God, my husband probably got his blood pressure raised up and whatnot. And I kept praying to Swami, and the answer I got from Swami is what I told her. Let me tell you what I said. I said, look, Puja, you can come home every other weekend to Austin to visit. And my husband says, wait, what are you saying? That's going to cost fortune every other weekend. No, first I said every weekend. And then I said, well, maybe every other weekend. And she said, are you sure? I said, yes, please stay there, try it. And you can come here on the weekend, no matter what the plane ticket is, I'll buy you plane ticket. And then my husband, of course, was definitely very much stressed out because it's a huge financial commitment. And then he said, how are we going to manage it? I said, trust me, this is going to work. So what happened, and you are a psychologist, Namu, you will realize what happened. She came 3-4 times. Then as soon as she realized, oh, I have a gate open to go back there, she lost the interest to come. And knowing that I have some place to go back, my door is not closed, I think that gave her such a huge reassurance. She stayed there and she completed her MBA from Notre Dame, stayed there for 2 years. We visited her, she visited us, but not every other weekend. So I just thought this was something I got after praying hard to Swami, and it worked. Saram.
Saram Manishanti, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, especially when you feel that all doors have shut. I think it's a very important point that she brought out, that just the fact that there is an opening And just that comfort that you get from the fact that there is an opening
Yeah.
certainly is such a big relief. But kind of coming back to what you were saying, you brought up a couple of very important points that I wanted to reflect on. One thing that you brought up was this, right? I always have said this. Probably I'm like a broken record, keep saying the same thing. But YAs always are in the spectrum of I like they say the quote: idealism precedes experience, and cynicism follows it. Right. So YAs always go from idealism to cynicism, and they vacillate strongly one way or the other. They're very idealistic, and then they also can be very cynical. And I would call a cynic a disappointed idealist, because like you were saying, you said people weren't necessarily walking the talk in the sense that unity of thought, word, and deed. We would talk the talk in the Sai world, and as imperfect examples around, you sometimes get cynical. That people talk a good game, but do they really walk the talk? And so you move from this end of idealism with which you're brought up in terms of values, in terms of your Sai SSE upbringing, and you see the reality and it hits you hard, and you move from this end of the spectrum to that. Now, once you get a little cynical, it's very interesting. It's hard to revert, because once you start seeing the world through that cynic's lens, right, a lot of things appear wrong, and a lot of us YAs go through this, especially with a lot of upheaval in and around us, even in the Sai organization front, and we see so much happening. How did you said something very interesting. How did you move from that cynic perspective to that of a believer? Let's try this out using logic. Like, because what you were seeing, the logic would have said people aren't necessarily following what they're saying. This is all humbug. They talk a good game. So where did this logic suddenly come and help you to figure out that, what, let's give this a real shot in terms of forget how folks are outside. Let me try to walk the talk in that sense of the term. How did that happen? It's a very interesting switch from that cynic back to, I wouldn't say a complete idealist, but wanting to revert back from there.
Realist. I think I'd consider myself a realist, because and I don't want to point any fingers with saying like I didn't see people walk the talk or whatever, but because I don't think I'm a perfect example of that either.
Right.
But when you notice those things, when there are some clear examples. So when you notice some of those situations, it's something you have to reflect on a little bit. I don't know, and I think it's a little bit of what I mentioned before, where I kind of just had this thought process, okay, I tried one thing, which was literally just sitting and complaining and doing nothing. And now I'm going to just try and do something.
Okay.
And I always look at it almost as sort of a strategic thing almost, where it's like, if I want to affect change in a system, I need to be part of that system, and I need to move high up enough to make that change happen. My voice needs to be heard in that system for it to happen. So that's one thing. But I also think when you like the logical thing, I think for me, because and some of it is like this is something I do when I'm like going through certain anxieties about certain some situations, or when I'm feeling that type of disappointment that I felt at that time in my life. I sort of had this thought process of, okay, well, is ruminating on this going to help me in any way? No. Is the energy I spend thinking negatively about these people, even, is that going to help me or them? No. Am I following Swami's teachings by doing this? No. And I kind of went through this whole checklist of, okay, well, if all these answers are no, then I need to stop doing this. Like, logically, that's the only thing that makes sense. So now let's do something else that's going to be productive. Like, for me, I kind of think about it in this way, like we think about practicing these human values and being service to society. And so I've always I kind of try to approach most things in thinking of, okay, am I being of service to society? Am I being am I of value right now, right? Am I helping a situation or hurting it? So I think at times like that, it's sort of that type of thought process that I try to practice
Mm.
to varying degrees of success, depends on the situation. But trying to tell myself like, okay, well, if this isn't gonna work, this was plan A, maybe. You need to revert to something else because that's not gonna. This is not a useful. This is not useful to me. This is not useful to other people. It's a waste of my time and energy to really, think this way. So let me just change how I think.
Mm.
Um, and when I got into the psychology of it all, I was thinking about, oh, okay, these are the ways that maybe I have to reflect on changing the way I think. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's something I can share to that point.
No, that's no, thank you for sharing that. And the other aspect I wanted to kind of touch upon with you was it's very interesting. I can see that even when you spoke about stuff taking a toll on your mental health, and I can even see that you're as a person you come across as someone who's sensitive, right? And or at least that's what I perceive. I may be
Okay.
wrong, but but and it seems like how did you go about reverting? How did you go about moving from a place of emotion and feeling a lot, stress in so many ways, that emotion turning negative or negative self-talk or whatever you call that negativity with respect to your emotion and what you are feeling, and turn it into devotion? How did that change from emotion to devotion? All these are sound bites for actually our retreat. I'll tell you that a lot
I
of
was
the
gonna
team.
say.
But how did you um, how did you manage to make that change as well? Because I feel like you've talked about how much you spoke about education, and the end of education is character. And what do you understand by that statement in that sense? Because again, you're in that space. When you say the end of education is character, what do you understand of that, and how has that helped you move from a place of emotion and oftentimes negative emotion to a place of devotion?
I love the soundbite, first of all. It's so catchy. Um, yeah, I think what I've been trying to do to that point is like, um, and because it's not to say we're never gonna feel that sense of anger or fear or whatever that negative emotion looks like. I've definitely felt that. I was feeling a little bit of the anxiety this morning when I was running around and doing a bunch of things, but for me, it's also a little bit of, again, it's that process of having to let go a little bit and just tell myself, you know what? I can't focus my time and energy on this right now because it's not helping me. So,
Hmm.
Swami, I'm going to give this to you. This is on your to-do list for today. Please help me
Wow.
fix this out. It's a little bit of that. And then like, and the other thing is, I don't know, to the point of like at the end of education as character, I always look at that as thinking, okay, I'm definitely not the smartest person in a room, and that's good. That's great, actually, because that means I have other people I can learn from.
Hmm.
Whether it's maybe what to do, maybe what not to do,
Yeah.
But there's always something that I can learn.
Makes
Um,
you smarter than me, I'll give you that.
no, I don't know, man. I know I'm learning a lot through you, Sridham. So, so I mean, yeah, I think it's a little bit of keeping that awareness in mind that our growth is never it never ends. It is always going to be constant. Um, and the fact that, like, going back to the emotion point, like, I have to tell myself that sometimes fears are not facts.
Hmm.
Just because I feel something does not mean that's a fact, right? There's a difference between my sensation of feeling and what is true. Um, and if I can't tell the difference, then I'm leaving it to Swami, right? If I don't know the answers, then that's great because we'll figure it out. And if I don't know, he definitely knows, and so he's got my back, and he always will. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I'll add one thing. I had the opportunity to go go to the beach last week. I was on a girls' trip,
Oh yeah.
and I
Instagram, I did see it.
oh man. But I had a moment where I was just like meditating on the beach. It was really wonderful. I was very excited for that. I kind of needed the trip, I'm not gonna lie. Um, and my friend and I, at some point, we had our feet in the sand.
Mm.
And I was sort of reflecting on this because when we took our feet out, you know, I look at it this way where when we took our feet out, there was this giant pit in the sand, right?
Mm.
But that pit grew smaller and smaller because the waves immediately came in and smoothed that sand out and rolled all over it until it was like we weren't even there. And I sort of was reflecting on that as of like, wow, you know, it's kind of the situation where like when we are feeling, you know, that tension and anxiety about something, you know, if I am so stressed about something that I can't let go and I'm asking Swami to help me, then how can I expect him to help me if I can't let go of it first? I need to be able to hand over the problem to him. That's how I was thinking about it. And so it's almost like, oh, well, I just need to, just how I took my feet out of the pit, I just need to let go and let him take a look at the situation and let him smooth it all over, right? Just like the waves did. And so that was sort of a thought process I was having. So I think, you know, part of what I've been trying to do, part of what I will continue to try to do is trust in him. And some of that happens through just keeping it simple, honestly, and just saying, like, Swami, you got this, because I don't think I do. And some of it is just working my way there logically until I can get to that point. So
It's that beautiful balance of almost bhakti and buddhi. There's this intellect helping you and logic helping you. And then at times when that clarity is not there, it seems like the devotion and leaving it to Swami takes over. And that beautiful balance between the two. I think Swami's blessed you, Sister Namu. You know, and I think we're very lucky to have people like you. I genuinely say this, you know, again, you know, I mean what I say and totally say what I mean, that both of you are amazing individuals and amazing YAs. It's such a blessing to be a part of you guys and part of this group. I know we're past time here. So if you want to end it, do it in your own style, and we can call it an evening. But these sort of sharings are such joy, you know, such joys, and I'm, you know, thankful and grateful to people like Brother Jagdish and Sister Urmi for giving us, you know, you know, a small boost and sharing what they felt. But yeah, before you just close it up, does anyone have any sort of burning question that they want to pose before we close here?
I just had a quick observation to make and a thank you to say, because both Sister Lakshmi and Namu, if I may call you that, you know, in their individual ways, they both gave me a message from Swami by what they said individually. You know, Sister Lakshmi's message was for me and my personal circumstances and what I'm going through. And, you know, and then this recent expression, you know, by Namu was actually about my daughter. So, you know, so both of you gave me very precise Swami messages. So I want to thank you for that and tell you how grateful I am. Sairam.
Sairam, Sister Urmi.
I have one request sometime, because you have the psychologist in your YA group, and Swami was the all-time psychologist of all. How the psychologists relate Swami's 9 points code of conduct, each and every one of them, psychologically correlating for the benefit of the mankind. That'll be a very interesting topics to correlate spirituality with this science of psychology.
Namu, that's your thesis, man.
yeah, I was just gonna say I need to write that down. That's a great topic, Auntie, honestly.
Anybody else? Not? Namu, you can feel free to end it any which way you want to do it.
Sure. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Sairam, thank you guys so much for having me.
Sairam, everyone. Good night. See you all at the retreat.